So, one of your titles is storytelling, not just policy making. Talk to us a little bit about that side of the work.
Yeah.
What does that mean? And why do you see that connected to policy?
Yeah, so a big part of equity. So what we are really pushing across all of the policy and storytelling activities that we do to center equity much more explicitly. Part of that is handing the baton over to diverse young leaders themselves. And so the forum has this SparkAction storytelling and advocacy platform that really is focusing in on supporting young leaders who are working to rebuild our nation on the foundation of equity and justice. And so really providing young people an opportunity to own their own narrative. So many misunderstandings happen because media depicts young people in some way, television depicts young people in some way, government depicts young people in some way. We need to let young people depict themselves in the way that are actually authentic. And so that's become an increasing focus of our work, is how do we let young people craft their own stories? People use the terms narrative change. And that to me is really letting young people create the narrative about what they see is going on, as well as instead of letting other people craft depictions of what's happening in the communities that are being underserved. Now that folks on this call have wasted nearly an hour listening to me, I think you'd be far better to use an hour going to the Youth Action Hour. If you just Google Youth Action Hour, it should come right up the top, where you're going to hear diverse young leaders say what they think needs to happen in the country. And I just sit and watch that. I'm like, they got it. Like, they're on it. We just need to find a way to get out of the way and give whatever connections and resources we have access to young leaders who can actually drive this change forward.
So give us an example of how we're bringing that forward. So we started out with a conversation, a lofty conversation about access into sort of federal policy circles, and now we're talking about sort of narratives created by young people. How do you connect them? What as you're moving forward, how do you bring those authentic voices into the policy spaces, Iowa, federal government, otherwise? What structures and infrastructures are you trying to help support?
Yeah. So at the federal level, the Twitter #YouthInGov movement has been pushing that forward. Probably not to the level of success we'd like to see in the Biden administration so far. But really politically savvy young people. So usually what happens is things related to youth voice get put in the White House Office of Public Engagement, which is essentially their communications arm. So we'll work with youth networks to get them to promote the stuff that we're doing, as opposed to we're going to work with youth networks to figure out what stuff we should be doing. And so Youth and Gov said it's not enough to put someone in the Office of Public Engagement. We do have a great point person liaison for young people in that office, but in the Domestic Policy Council, we need young people. That's the policy development arm of the White House. Young people should be in that. And even in the offices that are hiring political appointees, the Office of Presidential Appointments, we want young people in that, hiring young people into roles across government. So I think it's a great example of a loftier and more ambitious and correct look at not just a token youth council, but actually young people literally built into the fabric of the federal government across lines. Our children's cabinets, likewise, doing great things. We're getting ready to kick off a cohort of children's cabinets who want to support youth participatory research, to really get young people talk to their peers, interview their peers, collect data from and with their peers, and bring it back into the children's cabinet as part of a decision-making structure. And so that notion of connecting evidence, youth voice, put into actually government decision-making processes is another one that I'm hugely optimistic about. Last thing I guess I would say on that front is, as we've done federal advocacy, there was a moment amazing young leader, Joanne, who was working for us at the time, came back from working the halls of Capitol Hill, teared up from the fact that she was going around talking to all these white people in offices, white people in office, white people, and the only other people of color she saw were the people delivering the mail. And that was, to me, a real light bulb moment of, we need to diversify who has connections with people in power. And so we are gearing up in our work with Opportunity Youth, is instead of hiring DC government relations firms and specialists, not that there's anything wrong with them, we'd rather train young people themselves to become government relations professionals. And so we're getting ready to launch Opportunity Youth Congressional Liaisons, where we train and pay young leaders in congressional districts on how they can become government relation professionals and be the people who build the relationships with government officials rather than working through organizations like ours.